Hello, thank you so much for joining us. How was it for you, first and foremost, to write a book together?
Well, we took us 2 years to write it and we're still married. So it was good. It was actually a lot of fun. JJ has been the first editor of every book I've ever written, and there's like 70 of them now. So she knows what's going on. And it was your idea.
That's true. That's true. I wish that someone had written a book when I was the age to read shine, middle school, junior high school age, 8 to 12. I wish that I had read a book that said who you are as a person is more important than what you accomplish. So I told Chris that, and that's when he said, let's write it together.
And so we did. It took a while. It was 7 rewrites. I think we spent 2 whole years working on this book.
Well, I'm very glad you did spend those 2 years writing the book, because I wish I had read such a book when I was younger as well. I think it's absolutely wonderful, and I think it's going to help lots and lots of kids all over the world. Now, I know this is perhaps a question that has the answer somehow included, but why a book about kindness? Why did you feel that now we need a book about kindness for younger readers, for children, but I think also for parents?
Yeah, I think, we live in New York City where everyone is hyper competitive and kids are already competing to get into the proper preschool that will take them to the proper college. And you saw some actor that you worked with who just was so hard on himself.
Yes, I do voiceover recordings, and there's a young boy that I work with, and every time he makes a mistake, he hits his legs and he says, no, and it just kills me. I'm like, look, it's a recording. We can do it again. It's okay. I wish I had $1 for every time I made a mistake. I try to make him feel better about it, but I realize so many kids and parents are focused on the accomplishments and what's going to look good on a resume and what's going to help them get into the best college. But what about who they are as a person? I think sometimes people forget that part of it. And I thought it was really important. We both thought it was important to think about what kind of a person you are in the world and how you affect other people, because that's really more important when it comes down to it.
And those acts of kindness are just a great way to show your humanity. We have another friend who's a fire chief, and he went to a big training seminar at a hotel, and they were all being judged, they thought, by, these superior officers judging them. But at the end, they were not only judged by the officers, they were judged by the hotel staff, the bellhops, the people who cleaned up in the cafeteria areas, because there's an old saying, how you treat the janitor is just as important as how you treat the CEO.
Those are some very important things you just said. Many important truths you mentioned, like the one that we're not just one thing, but a constellation of choices. And why do you think this incredibly poignant truth becomes so largely ignored, especially as far as education is concerned? Because you just talked about the fact that we're all so pressured and so living on high speed. And we just forget that our children are not already in charge with white-collar jobs, and running for office or something else. Yes, but we do treat them as such. Many of us do.
Yes, and we're so focused, I think, on, math and science and everything, that we forget that we're also learning about character. And I think that's where books, as particularly fiction, comes into play, because fiction is the greatest tool for empathy, to sort of become someone else for 200, 300 pages and see the world through their eyes. And then it might make you, think differently about the people around you. So I guess, that we need to have more reading in schools, more reading, more books.
Definitely. And I think this kind of book can be excellent therapy and an excellent material for study, for everybody who may need it, because it also speaks about another very important aspect, the relationship between parents and children. We deal with absent parents, with parents who are so highly competitive that they just inflict that on their children, parents who are very demanding, parents who don't have time for their kids, parents who ignore, and finally, parents who don't know their children. Why did you feel it was so important to talk about that?
Well, we see a lot of that, and we had some experience ourselves growing up. We were both overachievers, and it wasn't until later in life you go, wait a minute, what am I trying to do? Win all this approval? Who I am has always been a pretty good person, so I'm going to focus more on that. But I think it's important for all of us to think about that relationship with kids. And that I like what you just said about parents who don't really even know who their kids is. I think about the character Tim, the magician, whose father probably has no idea what the son. And I guess because I was a theater kid and a writer kid, and my father was a chemical engineer, I don't think he understood who I was very much at all. So maybe I was having a little therapy with this book too.
Me too, because the character of Brooke is loosely based on me. When I was in school, I was a singer and I really wanted to do musical theater, but my parents thought opera was more appropriate and more important. So they tried to get me to sing classical music, which for me, it wasn't my thing. And that was very frustrating for me. So that's why Brooke has that same struggle in the book, and her father just doesn't get it. He just doesn't understand. That's not what makes her tick.
These are very interesting things you just mentioned, because all these children in the book are equated with one thing. Your argument actually is you're never just one thing, but you can be one thing at a certain time, but we're not we're not boxed to what other people think of us. So
exactly.
This opens a big conversation.
That line that we have about constellations, because you think about it, you look at the stars, you don't look at just one. You have to put several of them together to get the whole picture of the Dipper or whatever, Ursa Minor, Ursa Major up there in the sky. So even Piper is more than, she's a very nice person. That might be her strong suit, but she's also a very smart person. And she's also very good at science and astrology. And so we are all collections. It's like connect the dots, those little games that kids play when they're young. I think our personalities are all connect the dot games.
What was the inspiration for Piper? Because you just said about Tim and Brooke, and I suppose every character passing by, is based on someone or inspired by a thing. What was the inspiration for her?
JJ doesn't like it when I say it, but it's true. She's the nicest person I've ever met in my life. She goes out of her way to be kind to everybody she meets. Very rarely gets grumpy at all. And
you're very lucky.
I know.
That's nice.
I think I was very, I was sort of celebrating that because I know how fortunate I am.
Oh, he's Mr. Piper. I think Brooke is more based on me than Piper, but that's very nice of him to
I
say.
think you were the inspiration for Piper, and going through life that way, you might as well go through that way, being, it makes life just a lot more fun. So I've had a good 20 years. We've been married almost 20 years now.
Wow, that's great. Now, I was thinking about you two writing a book together, and I was thinking about how couples cook together in a kitchen, and very often they disagree. Somebody wants more salt or pepper, and somebody says, no, it's just fine like that. Do you ever disagree on characters or some turn of the plot or, I don't know, whatever?
Yes, we did.
Yeah.
And what would happen is if I felt strongly about something, I would try to convince Chris of my position. I would tell him why, or he would try to tell me his position. And usually one of us convinced the other. And I would say, oh, I see what you're saying. All right, let's change it. Or he would say that. But the very few times that neither one of us could convince the other, we said, you know what? Something's wrong. Let's throw it out and write the whole scene over.
Write the whole scene over. And the hardest part was probably we have very different writing styles, because I've been like typing since I went to college and studied journalism and things. And then I worked in advertising for 20 years. So my brain goes immediately to my fingertips. And JJ is a performer. She's an actress, a voiceover actress, a stage actress, and she wanted to act out all the parts. But I was acting them out silently in my head, and they were dancing through my fingers. So once we figured that out, because I'd be in there going, and she'd go, oh, I know what happened. I go, because I was hearing something in my head. So we kind of got to a point where we went back and forth, because I found this in advertising where you work as a team. You have a writer and art director working together. You brainstorm the idea. You sort of plot out the idea together. Then the writer goes and types up things. So with us, we worked for months on the outline. We would act things out, and then I would write like a chapter, show it to her, and she'd mark it up, and I'd rewrite it. We go back and forth. So that it worked out pretty nicely once we got our technique down.
Well, it sounds like great fun as well. Do you have fun writing it? Because
it is kind of neat to have both of us focused on it, because unfortunately, when I'm working on a book of my own, most of them are mysteries or puzzles, so I can't tell her what's going on until she reads the whole thing. So it's like 4 or 5 months of nobody knows what's going on. So it was really fun to be working on a story where we both knew what was going on, and we could both go out. You know, you get a lot of ideas when you just go out for a walk, and you come back and go, oh, I figured it out. I know what should happen. So that was a lot of fun.
What was the most important feedback you got so far?
Well, I guess what would you say?
I love that letter we got from the kid. We get letters sometimes from children who have read the book, and this boy wrote to us and he said, listen, I have to tell you, I read Shine and I loved it. And the week after I finished Shine, a new kid started at our school, and I made sure that I was extra nice to the new kid. And we said, yes, it worked. That's what we were hoping would happen.
No, I'm glad you told me that JJ was the inspiration for Piper, because I wanted to ask you, now, besides being so nice and kind to everybody, Piper has an extra talent that actually shines throughout the book. She sees through people. She can see people for their true selves. Was that conscious, or did it just happen? Did it just come out? Did she just shine?
Wow, I never realized, but I guess you're right. Yes, she does. Yeah. I thought you were going to talk about how she's good at astronomy. But she does. She's very good. I think both of us, because JJ was an actor and I'm a writer, you spend a lot of time observing other people and trying to figure out. And if you're creating a character for a play, or if you're creating a character for a story, you know that nobody is just one thing, that there's something that doesn't quite fit. And you're always looking for that sort of off angle. That's what makes your character three-dimensional. You don't want flat characters who are all good or all bad. There's like a reason, like, oh, I see why Ainsley acts the way she does. And I guess we go through life observing that. Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And Piper, because she really doesn't have her own, she doesn't have a big ego. She's not like one of the kids who's, trying to succeed at everything. She kind of feels like she doesn't belong there. So her ego is not in the way. When she meets someone, she really is open to them and listens to them and takes in who they really are. It's not about her, it's about them.
Well, as I've already said, we love your book. So are you planning on co-writing again? Say yes.
Yes, yes, and only in Hungarian. We're going to learn Hungarian.
Romanian.
Romanian. Let me say that again. But only in Romanian. So you guys can, we have an idea right now, but I've been so busy on, there's some new Mr. Lemoncello books and some other things I'm doing with James Patterson that we haven't had time to sit down and do it yet. But hopefully that's going to change in the fall.
You definitely must find that time.
Yes.
Now, I had questions for both of you, but now I have a question for each of you. It's the same question, but I think we're going to have different answers. What do you think is your biggest talent at the moment? What makes you shine?
JJ?
I guess I would have to say animals. I love volunteering with animal rescue, and I think I have a special, just patience with cats who are terrified. That's my favorite thing, is to work with little kittens and cats who are so scared and get them to the point where they trust humans so they can get adopted and get a home.
It's wonderful.
Yeah, and I guess I've always had the ability to make other people laugh even when they're feeling down. So I guess that would probably be my best talent, is brightening up people's days. And that's why I'm so glad that we're coming out of lockdown here in New York City and we can see people again. Yes. and brighten a few days.